completed work? Because you were talking to people last time.
The contract won't be ready to go to the city.
We have a couple issues
No,
with
there's
that.
typos.
Exactly, no. And they won in overtime in the last 4 seconds last night.
Yeah, I mean, I get enough over my Facebook feed that I gotta know what's going on in the
That's
game.
right, at a team that had not lost yet. It was great, it was a great game.
It was awesome. So I said, I got a stomachache watching it.
Oh, I
don't
know.
get that involved in it usually.
And the refs.
Oh, they were awful. And so were the announcers.
Yes.
Announcers were horrible.
I told Darwin, I said, you can tell who the announcers are.
Yeah. But when the Seahawks won, they were pretty like, oh yeah, we knew that. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
That's a good game.
It was, right down
There you
the road. Last 4 seconds of overtime.
Yes, no, yeah, I'll never get through that. I like watching MMA fights and stuff like that.
Oh, really? Now, see, I can't do that.
Yes, football and basketball.
Yeah.
Basketball. I like basketball.
See, I like that because I started watching my granddaughters play.
Oh, I
so
love
then
to
you get
watch.
in-
Yeah.
I was checking myself for third card.
Make it go a little easier. My whacker.
Mr. Fredericks, you wanted some funding, so I set some funding on here.
I got that, thank you.
Well, make sure.
Yes,
Okay. So it's just everything.
The most important
Thank
part
you.
of the meeting.
$1 million. Wish I had $1 million.
It is 7:02, and I believe so, yes, I see him. It is Tuesday, November 12th, 2019. This is a workshop for the City of Woodland Council regarding the preliminary budget. This evening, we have Chief Kelly doing the presentation. He is the final presenter for staff. And he's not here.
MIA.
Yeah, and he is MIA. No, Mr. Boyce.
We do have a few other things to...
Okay, let's tackle those real quick while the chief is preparing.
Do we need to start?
Yeah, so,
Oh, yeah, sorry, can we, thank you. Mrs. Ripp, could you please take the roll? I just jumped right in. I didn't even let everybody know who's here.
oh, okay.
Mrs. Ripp?
Councilmember Chapman?
Here.
Councilmember Humbert?
Here.
Councilmember Fredericks?
Here.
Councilmember Graham?
Here.
Councilmember Plaza?
Here.
Councilmember Rounds?
Here.
Councilmember Smith?
Here. Everybody's here. And this evening, Mr. Boyce, I'll turn it over to you if you want to go over a few things first before we let the chief do his presentation this evening.
Sure. So everyone has a packet of material in front of them. The page 3 of 117, there were a few changes we needed to make to the expenditure budget. Thursday afternoon, Vice Treasurer Rick and I met with our insurance providers, and we are looking at an increase in insurance. So we need to adjust up by $27,717. It's offset a little bit here. So the CW COG amounts, we received an email from them. We can reduce what's in the budget by $6,813. The Humane Society, there was an increase there I missed of $669. So the net increase to the expenditures is $21,573. So that overall fund balance increase we were talking about between the general reserve fund, the general fund, street and park, we had that pegged at $97,000, so that's going to be decreased by that amount, $21,573. So just wanted to make everyone aware of that. Next on the agenda, we had revenue.
Hey, Mr. Boyce, before you continue with that, on the insurance renewal, what was the reason for the premium increase?
Well, we do still have some lingering effects from lawsuit payouts that occurred previous to...
So those cost money?
They do cost money.
Okay. And the reason I ask is because it's been, a few times, it's been suggested that if we just got rid of the city administrator, we wouldn't have these issues. We wouldn't have issues if we didn't have a city administrator where everything would be great, but we tried that. didn't seem to work real well, and now we're paying it on the back end with all these lawsuits. So I just want to be clear that we've had some people suggest that the way to fund the police department is robbing Peter to pay Paul, but in essence, we're paying it out anyway, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So if you look back to 2017, our insurance premiums, overall liability and property were about $194,000. For the 2019 budget, we didn't have the actual quote yet, so we do need to increase it. We budgeted $225,000. That actually has to go up quite a bit. $30,000 of that was because the wastewater treatment plant has liability insurance for discharges into the river. The insurance carrier we were using decided not to offer that insurance any longer, so we had to go out and get a quote. So every 5 years, we're going to have a $30,000 hit. So that hit in 2019. We don't have it for 2020, but we do have, it's about a 7.5% increase for 2020. Not all of it's due to lawsuits. Some of it's, just the claims experience of the pool. But it is an increase. So we're looking at, we went from 194 and now we're into the low 300 range. So we're looking at around 304,000. But what I was getting to, the 2019 appropriation still needs to be adjusted up because we didn't have the figures at the time. So it looks like a rather large increase from 2019 to 2020. But it was just because of the timing of the quote we got from the insurance budget.
And this is a one quote deal, or how does that work? There's nobody else that does this line of work?
Well, yeah,
I ask this every year. I think I get the same answer.
The pool does go out and request quotes from different insurers. This time they went out to Old Republic. But every year they do look and see what the best rates out there are. We're also looking at, we're talking to City Councilor Chapman this evening at the finance meeting about some changes we could make to deductibles. Right now we have a $1,000 deductible. We could increase that to $5,000. And just this afternoon we received some pricing on what that would mean in premium. Basically it would be a savings of about $13,000 to $14,000. So we need time to digest that information and make a recommendation.
And you're looking at historical analysis on that as well, I would assume?
Yes.
Okay, well, I will leave it at that, but I just wanted to be clear that, when the city is sued, we end up paying for it through increased insurance premiums. It's like when I get a rock chip and I have to replace my entire window. Well, I didn't pay the $800 up front, but when I get a $700 increase to my insurance at the end of the year, in essence, I really did pay for that rock chip that took out the windshield. It's the same concept here, where we're paying a lot of money for past sins that we're now having to pay for. That was my only point.
All right. Moving on to the next item, the fee schedule for 2020. Let's see if we can see this. So maybe I'll let you discuss this, Mary, if you don't mind.
So as part of our finance committee packet, we wrote this earlier this evening. But what we've been trying to do is look at the costs for the community center and our parks. And our community center, our parks have been running in the red, and so we're trying to see what we can do to do a small fee increase to help supplement those amounts. Tracy has been pretty adamant about what we're going to do for parks and other ways we can generate revenues, and the fees are also one way. But what we're recommending is that we do a small increase to the community center fee for the Woodland residents through the nonprofits and the regular users. And we have suggested Woodland residents go up to $100 per for a nonprofit. And then our regular users would go to $50 a month for one organization. We have a church that meets in there, $100 a month. And that down is double because of the number of users and the wear and tear in our facility and the amount of supplies we have to use to maintain them. And then Fort Vancouver Regional Library also uses this, so that would be $50 a month. And then we have an overage charge that we charge everybody if they go on more than 16 hours of use. Horseshoe Lake Park, right now, we have a couple different ideas there. We are right now running between 6,600 and 7,000 in the red, and that doesn't include all the staff time we have to do for down in the parks. But we're looking at the shelter cost going to $100 per use, non-women would be $140, and then the nonprofit would be $50. We also are looking at the special event fees, and we did a whole analysis for that, provided that to the finance committee. And so I know there's some of the nonprofits that the council has granted fee waivers in the past. But again, our park is running in the red, and we're not able to generate enough to pay for those expenses, and we've been supplementing the park for quite a few years. So if we looked at a comparison, we're looking at the 2019 rate only generated $1,750 in fees for the special events, and we're looking at going to $5,600. So we have a 3-tiered system. Tier 1 would be $100, and that's if you had 0 to 150 people with no entry fee. And those would cover, I can give you some examples, Easter egg hunt, fishing derby, our Memorial and Veterans Day ceremony, hot summer nights, and another fishing event, the Newfoundland Dogs, and Winter Fest. Tier 2 would be a $400 rate, and that would be $150 per person with no entry fee. And an example of that we did for this year would be Planners Day Carnival, the fire department barbecue. There's a lakeside party run by one of the churches, another church that did a story time, another church that had an event, another church that had an event. And then a $500 rate is tier 3. That would be an event with an entry fee, which would be, in the past, Balloons to Brews would have fell under that, the triathlon, and then we also had a beer garden put on by the local establishments. So those 3 tiers are kind of patterned off some other cities that do something similar, and so in order to generate a small amount, which is really only half of what we've estimated in the costs for the city, which include staff time, refuge, some of the utilities, and that's including the clerk's office, public works hours, and the police department hours. So about half of that 10,000 is general fund, and half of it would go into the active park fund. So staff has made that recommendation to the council and the finance committee to look at those. Other fees that we're looking at are a small increase to the business license fees. We're looking at the animal control fees to maybe to try to true those up, and I know the Humane Society has asked for that for a while. Those billings actually would need to take action in November, December, for effective date of January 1. And then there's also public records, reproduction costs. We need to have a little bit more clarification on some of those costs. And then land use, community development. And then I know the building department, they have a ICC update that comes, I think it's mid-year 2019. that one will be following next year. And then the police department just had a few changes in their fingerprints, paper service, and reports. And then the fire department is contracted under Clark County Fire, so we need to start off their fees coverage.
We had this discussion last Wednesday during our, I think it was last Wednesday, wasn't it? I fully support this. When you see that something's not operating itself, I think that it's only necessary that the adjustments be made. I know that it probably doesn't feel good to raise rates on public facilities, but I think it's necessary in order to keep operating appropriately.
When you charge the fees for so many people, how do you ask the people how many people they expect to have there? Is that how you charge them?
That's on their application.
That's on their application, okay.
So it's on.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions on the fee? Mrs. Graham?
And then this one that he has up now has a lot of detail on there, trusted in that, I won't go over it individually, but we have it broken out by community center and park fees, and then there's a 19 comparison to 20, so if you're interested, you can look at that.
Mrs. Graham?
Excuse me.
It's okay.
I didn't catch what all the fees were going to be for the park for Planners Day, Mary. Could you give those to me again?
So the Planners Day would be...
It'd be for the field, for the carnival, and then for the other one too.
So that would be considered,
Or will it?
I can give you a copy of the spreadsheet too, we just have
okay.
this kind of picked it up tonight, but for discussion, we wanted to have something for you. So it would be, that would be, the Planters Day would be tier 2, which would be $400, which is $100 plus $150 per millage. And then the carnival, which is sponsored by fire, is $400, and then the barbecue is also $750.
Okay.
Those are all considered tier 2.
Are we charging for the car show separately? So all the events are being charged separately?
The car show is actually under the umbrella of the Planners Day Committee.
Okay.
So
Okay. That's just one, okay.
So that's different though than our park fee, is that correct? Is that another additional?
These are a special event fee, the other ones are like park rental fees for if you say you want to have a picnic down in the park.
Yeah, right. So then what would the extra fee be then for the car show?
That's.
For the streets
right
and
now-
beans?
Right now, it's included in the.
Included in what we do? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
No, I thought you said something.
Tell me that that's what I said.
Oh, okay. Mr. Fredericks?
So, couple things. Would you say this is for Ms. Coleman, would you say our park budget is bare bones?
It's negative, bare bones.
Thank you for, that just helps my argument, but if you would have said it, just, yeah.
It's negative.
Right. I'm really sorry I missed the Finance Committee meeting. Some of this would have been aired already. So our budget currently is only covering the basics of the park.
Our budget currently is not covering the basics of the park, what your statement was.
Yes.
And that is 100% correct.
That's what it was.
It is not.
It's not.
It is not covering.
Correct,
It is correct. This, in my mind, all these things that we're talking about are extras. The taxpayers of Woodland subsidized the park by $10,000 last year. People who didn't necessarily use the park. I didn't. I walked around the loop once. I think that was my extent of the park. But I subsidized everybody who used that park by $10,000 extra.
Maybe county residents?
Maybe.
I'm just getting it out there. I mean, let's be honest.
It very well could be. Now we're saying, hey, we want to make that a little bit better, and we want to do it at a $6,000 loss. It would be my suggestion to true this up with what reality is. What are these extra, the people that are using the park, extra, should pay the extra. And I'm of the mindset, I had a really good, somebody provided this, and I'll keep this individual's name private, but suggested that we blacktop over Park Road. Is it Park Road or Park Street? Someone Park Street.
Park.
Thank you. Blacktop over that and make it all parking. And by doing so, you could number these parking spots and create additional revenue by the people who are using the park in our busiest times of the month. And I'm not suggesting year-round fees, but I am suggesting when we're June, July, August, that we get something additional because we have additional taxes on the park. The park is being, the park system in itself is being overtaxed, and we don't have enough revenue to fund the expense associated with this. So we either have to offer less, which is what we're doing in our budget, we're offering less, or we have to cut as well. Something doesn't make, something in my mind is just, it's not adding up on paper with the original, how we're doing this, and trying to attempt to fund our parks every year. The revenue and the expense don't match.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's a couple things I'd like to say on that. There are ways that I go to the park committee and the Horseshoe Lake committee and bring up ideas of how do we get additional revenue. And as you know, one of the ideas is to bring vendors in this year.
What in?
Vendors.
Vendors,
Like
got it.
So there's income for us. They're gonna be paying us a certain percent of what they make. Another thing is that I've talked to the chief about too is, putting parking meters out there. So, the parking meters are valid for a certain time, like you said, the busiest time of the year that we collect on that. But then you have the expense of the parking meter. I also talked about, the chief said, an annual use permit. Those people who want to do the park there, you have to have an annual use permit. So a way to bring annual, meaning the peak, busiest time of the year, you need this permit during this season. But just any way to generate additional revenue into the park, I'm in full agreement of, because we do have outsiders that use that. Increasing the fees when we have triathlons coming to town, or we have big events that are paying us $400, it doesn't make any sense when they're utilizing that park for a whole weekend and the wear and tear on the park. And while I like the Planters Day celebration and I like the firemen when they do the barbecue, there's so many people that track down into that park. The fees need to be raised because of that, because of the wear and tear on the park itself. And we're only talking one park here. We're not even talking the rest of the parks in their residential neighborhoods. So.
Right, and I'm not like, hey, we need to raise fees, but I'm talking about the extras.
Yeah.
These are extras. The extra usage that the park gets those 3 months a year. Our police department is down there doing foot patrol. The extra garbage that needs to be picked up. I think there's many times there's porta potties down there. There's all these extras, and I as a taxpayer, and my neighbor as a taxpayer who doesn't use the park, doesn't really want to subsidize the people who are using it extra by $6,000 when that money could be used to water the parks and keep them green. So that's my 2 cents. I think that should be something that's looked at.
And these are only the fees for the places that you can rent. That doesn't
Right.
cover any of the rest of the parks.
And presumably you raise the rent, maybe you have less. Maybe you'll have, that's too much, and now we don't want to use it. Well, then that it very well could happen. And that's typically what happens when government thinks if we raise fees or we raise taxes, we'll get more. Sometimes it backfires and you get less. We saw that happen with our water. Okay, fine, I won't water my grass anymore if you're going to charge me for sewer. I mean, we see that. We raise the cigarette tax in the state and revenues go down. Oh, that's interesting. Maybe people are finding a different place to buy cigarettes. It's the same concept, but it would seem to me that that would also reduce our expense as well. Less burden on the park.
Mr. Smith?
One thing I would like to say is, if we do look at like an annual fee, you were saying like county residents use it, maybe try to make a city resident gets either a discount or doesn't have a fee to park there if we do an annual fee parking.
My only concern
Ms. Rance.
with the parking is if you're going to charge for parking, they're going to line the streets, and the streets are going to be every parking spot, and the businesses are going to have a problem with people parking there and walking down to the park so that they don't have to pay the fee. I'm not saying I'm not for it, but that's what's going to happen.
We could address that with some signage, I think.
Well, I don't
Like they read the signs?
They'll find a ticket if they don't.
Ms. Ember?
I understand why we have to do some of this, but I think we need to be really careful about charging people. I think it's awesome to see our park being used in the summer. The kids in the lake and the picnics, and they're playing baseball or whatever. I don't want that to stop, and if we start charging, That's one thing families can go do that doesn't cost anything. We're not gonna do it. If I had to pay to go down there, I wouldn't do it. I just wanna be careful about what
On
we
the
and
other
how we
hand,
do
if
it.
the park fund doesn't have the money to make sure that the lake is clean and that the needles that the junkies use in the park aren't picked up, then families aren't gonna go there anyway.
Not disagreeing with that. I'm saying we need to do this, but we need to be careful how we do this.
Well, I'm just suggesting it, that if we take a look at it, because I, quite frankly, don't think that the taxpayers of Woodland should be subsidizing the people who are doing the extras. I don't think they should be having to pay for that. I think they should be the ones that get to see parks that are green. You could use that additional money to fund, ensure that our parks are watered. I don't know, it's out of whack in my mind, and if I could privatize the whole park system, I would, but that's just me. I'd call it Corwin Park instead of Horseshoe Lake Park. If I could get Corwin to sponsor the park and give us $25,000 a year for maintenance, to have their name on it, I would be all over that. But we haven't explored those, we haven't explored that as a possibility.
Why can't everyone be from there?
Just come up with these ideas and then I step back and hopefully someone else runs with it.
I believe this is the 4th year that suggestion has been made since I've been sitting in this chair.
Yeah, well,
I think part of that is leaning towards Tracy's better ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Miss Rip, I had a question. You had mentioned the Humane Society.
Yes.
No one's ever been able to answer this question, so maybe things have changed since we got a rate increase. How do we know if I take my dog to the vet and I pay a licensing fee, who audits them to ensure that those dollars flow to where they're supposed to flow? Is it I watch, you're just gonna have to take my word for it, this is how much licensing money that I collected, and this is what we send, and who do we send it to? Does that flow through the city? And then we send that to the county, or to the Humane Society? Does it go directly to the Humane Society? Tell me how that works, even though you have to remind me every year.
So the pet licenses go to the veterinary clinic, and then they pass that on to the Humane Society. The city is not in the loop on that anymore, and that is supposed to be as a direct result of the current fees that we have. So, for instance, you could say that the city's portion is $14,000, but maybe the veterinary and licensing is generating $14,000. So the Humane Society would be getting $20,000.
And how do we know what they're actually collecting from us?
Have to ask for that.
Okay.
And during the last negotiation, I asked that question because I've heard you raise it before. And there, at least during that time period, they said there is no audit. It's basically the honor system. So
We do have the ability to go and audit if we want to.
How often
That
do
is
we
in the
use them?
contract.
The Humane Society.
What?
How often are they put to use for the city? How often does the city use the Humane Society here?
Whenever there's a
They send us
reaction.
a quarterly report, and it's on different areas. I can provide that to you.
But they,
Is it $14,000 worth of service? In your opinion? In anybody's opinion? Do you think we use them enough for $14,000?
You know, honestly, it's a big can of worms because we do need the Cowlitz Humane Society because, you know, when we have an animal that needs to go someplace, that's where it goes. Kalama, I believe, uses their police department to take care of animal calls, and they actually use some of their city hall staff to watch the animals until you know, there's some disposition to the case. It's just not something we're set up to do. You know, we did talk about Clark County during the negotiations, and all the cities talked about, well, you know, would it be cheaper to hire a couple animal control officers, you know, just the city's hiring, and then, you know, drive down to Clark County. Some numbers were ran on that, and they decided it was best to stay with the current system. However, no one was really happy with the dollar amounts that were flying back and forth. But in the end, you know, the other jurisdictions just decided it wasn't in the best interest of themselves to go that way.
And, so you're, I lost my train of thought there for a second, but, are they only responding to calls, or are they doing anything proactive? I've never seen them here proactively.
We do not, some jurisdictions ask them to patrol. The city of Woodland hasn't, simply trying to keep the cost down. When they do drive through the city of Woodland, I believe they do count that as patrol time. Either on their way to a call or, you know, if they're running through Woodland to another call.
So
On
do we
their-
get charged extra for that?
On their way to the
It's
county.
part of the contract.
As they come through
On the way
Woodland,
from
they
their
count it
house
as a
to
call
work,
even
and
though
But
they're
when
going to
they
the
give
county.
statistics,
Well,
you know, that's,
do we know how much the Humane Society gets from the vets?
yeah. We can get that number from the Humane Society.
We just don't know if it's an accurate number.
No, I know, but
It's
I'd be
self-reported.
curious to
And they
see what they're
also, I don't know,
collecting even.
under their new director, they had said that, I think it's last year, they said that they were going to be doing canvassing for licensing compliance, but I don't know what the new director's
Yeah.
thought on it.
I'd be curious to see what they're collecting from the vets myself.
We can get that for you.
Okay.
Chief, is there, how often do the officers take animals up there to the Humane Society?
Most of the time when we have an animal call, we require them to come down and get them.
Okay.
We'll put them in the bullpen in the back.
Okay.
Because we do have a little bit of a cage for them.
Like a holding area?
But,
Incarcerate the animals?
Most of the time, some of the, well, I won't say most of the time, but some of the time, the animal issues could have themselves up. Where somebody would bring an animal by, and we post it on Facebook, and a few hours later, that individual comes and gets their.
I've seen
their
that.
animal.
Okay.
And that works nice, I
Yeah,
think.
we've done that a couple of times,
Yeah.
but you know, on a Saturday, we don't have office staff here, or Sunday, we don't have office staff here to sit with an animal, so we don't show up. So there are times where the officers will call the Humane Society, and that response time varies depending on the time of day.
Okay. So we're not putting them in the back of patrol cars and running them up there?
No,
Okay.
no, they don't have those, they used to have those catch boxes where if we found a stray, we could drop them off in that kennel. And they would check them every couple of hours.
All right, thanks.
We don't have that anymore.
Any other questions on the fees or Humane Society?
So was there, on the park thing, where's this gonna go?
That's going to come back to council on November 18th for consideration of the resolution,
Approving the entire budget?
a fee resolution.
Just for this, though?
That will be included in the fee resolution.
Are you asking that it be re-looked at?
Well, I think it would be appropriate for us to at least know whether or not we, what it would be to right-size it and make it zero. At least to know that.
So, yeah, and so we'll have an updated report for you. And then
Okay.
also the 6,000 I'm talking about here did not include the increase for the special events that we just got the tiers worked out.
So if you were gonna true it up and have it be zero, what that would look like. I think that would be appropriate to at least know. Whether or not the council adopts it is another thing, but it'd be interesting to know.
So we'll have that in our report on Monday.
Okay.
Okay, the next item is police.
Make a motion, we adjourn?
You don't have that kind of juice.
I know.
You try every time.
Story of my life.
Every time.
So when I went through the budget, realizing that our, I guess, special revenue source that we had was eliminated or out of business, I really considered quite a few things. I did it on either a 3 or a 5% increase, which is standard over the last couple of years that I've dealt with. Our biggest expense is probably going to be our jail expense, because that expense has gone up 8% this year for the upcoming year. And our communications expense which typically goes up about 5% each year. So those are the big chunks. Now, as you know, the salary and the benefits package for the PD is increased considerably with the conclusion of the contract negotiations. Some of the things that Pete and I sat down and went through line by line, we eliminated quite a few things or reduced quite a few of the fees by either 1,000 or a couple of hundred to try to cut corners. The biggest concern that I have is last year the council made the decision to invest in the department by improving our radios and some of our equipment. And that forever I'll be grateful. However, this situation now that we're in, I increased my training request and that type of stuff in the hopes that the council would invest in the personnel overall versus the department itself with equipment. So the training budget I asked for is a little, it may seem unreasonable. However, after my conversation with Pete, we reduced it considerably, and all I'm really asking for is for us to continue with funding our training budget the way it was before. I would also ask council to consider continuing with our fleet increases, because as of now, I didn't ask for a car this year. I asked for it as part of our enhancement, but I didn't ask for a car, in knowing that our revenue would be a little tight. So those are the big things. And I know that we're going to have some questions down the line, but I think that with the budget that I've put together, I think we're down to where we can still function, but it's going to be a little tight. And I have a couple other things that are really we'll have to examine cutting services and those type of things, but hopefully we'll learn a little bit more in the next few days of what our ultimate situation is going to be.
Questions for the chief, or any items in particular on his budget?
So in your training budget, what things can you guys afford to do this year, other than required by law, range and all that kind of stuff?
Well, we do have, and I can tell you that at for our core subjects, the core thing, the 24 hours for each officer, including myself, to maintain our certification is upwards towards $35,000. That other 10,000 that we use is for necessities to improve our department, because as usual, we have to consider some of the officers that may be retiring in the next 3 to 5 years. So filling those specialty spots with a firearms instructor or an EVOC instructor or defensive tactics, patrol tactics instructors would be beneficial. So at some point this year, we're looking forward to, or if we can, we're looking forward to sending an officer to a firearms class or a defensive tactics class or a field training officer class, just so that we can have those officers, for lack of a better term, pad their resumes for career advancement. But right now, we're looking at roughly about $35,000 to maintain our 24 hours. With the increase, with the law changes from I-940 passing, that's going to require our officers to go through 40 hours of additional training dictated by the criminal justice training. And that's all leaning towards our de-escalate Washington critical incident, those type of things.
And we have to pay for that, or it comes out of your guys' budget, this training that the state is mandating that you go to now?
Yes, sir.
So basically, if you wanted to send somebody to like child abuse investigations, you couldn't afford to do that.
Well, if there was, well, yes, you're correct. Wouldn't be able to. Yeah, I mean, we look for it, and Sergeant Lip does a fantastic job, as well as some of the officers that are responsible for looking for training. But Sergeant Lip does a great job in trying to find either a no fee or a small fee for the registration. But ultimately, no matter, even if it's free, it's not free because we're required, or because of our minimum staffing, we need to have an officer fill that officer's spot while he's vacated in full training, he or she.
So we have the overtime.
Right. And Sergeant Lip does a fantastic job on that because he calculates, I mean, even on the high end, right now we're looking at close to our $45,000 to the nickel situation that will be at by the end of the year.
So basically, in addition to that, so we have a couple of new officers on.
Yes.
Obviously, there's some, not required, but some, good training that will benefit them in the city down the road, like interview and interrogation courses and criminal investigations and things of that matter. So
absolutely,
until we get our ducks in a row and our budget squared away, will they not be able to get that sort of training because we can't afford it, or what's that look like for the coming year?
well, and really, we haven't looked into planning on any training other than the minimum 24 because, well, I'm anticipating some big changes as far as our deadlines of when these 40 hours, this new training by CJTC, the new training that comes up. We just don't, right now we don't know.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Mr. Fredericks?
I have a few questions, Mr. Kelly. Of the training that you do, how much of that training is unfunded mandates from the state? Which means they've mandated that you take it, but we're not going to provide you any funding. More of a, hey, let the cities figure it out. Do you know?
I would say probably most of it.
Most of it, okay. So I have a question regarding the training budget, because I looked into the line item on the budget.
Yes.
And the budget calls for, the 2019 budget calls for an $11,000 expense on training. Through August, which is 8 months, right? Through 8 months, a total of $5,523 was spent in training. Now, I don't know if you have a bunch of invoices or a bunch of training that hasn't been paid for, but that leads me to believe that you're not going to need more money for next year. You're not using the money that is already being provided, which you should be thanked for. Thank you. But help me understand that. Is there more training that has not been paid for that has not hit the books as of August 31st?
Yes.
Do you know what that number
There's
is?
some, I don't know what the total numbers are, but there's going to be some invoices that will come up. I don't know if it's going to make that 11,000. However, that 11,000 was towards tuition and registration fees and that type of stuff. Not considering some of the other items, some of the other line items are used for figuring the overtime dollars that it would take to send these officers.
So if you requested $11,000, are you telling me that you're going to spend all $11,000 in 2019?
It's going to be close. Go ahead.
Mrs. Ripp?
So the police department, because the majority of their training costs are in salary and benefits, we try to split that out accordingly for registration and travel costs for the officers to either stay in town or travel in the state. But what would be left in that training budget would be moved into the salary and benefit line item because you're going to probably see that those are not.
Well, and that's my point, is that if you're budgeting money in the training department, and you're also budgeting it in the salary and expenditure line, you're double budgeting.
Well, we're not budgeting, we're trying to forecast what the salary and benefits portion of the training is gonna be, and then put an amount also in the training line item for just registration, travel costs for if there's any overnight or any books or related types of things.
So is the additional increase then, which is a $4,000 increase, and the reason I'm asking is because I feel like I have to nickel and dime through this budget, because that's where we're at. It's not in a, it's.
And then I think the police department through Sergeant Lip also keeps a separate spreadsheet which shows all the detail on those 3 officers.
Oh, I'm sure
Yeah.
if I needed more detail, Mr. Lip would be able to
Yes.
provide it to me. So what is the additional increase then next year? What additional training are you going to be doing that you did not do this last year?
It depends on what CJTC mandates.
So they're mandating additional traiing?
Yes.
I
40
didn't
hours.
realize that it was an additional,
40 hours,
and that covers it.
yeah.
Okay?
As of right now, Sergeant Lip has us down for, and this is overtime and everything included, $44,576.97
Yep.
total for training. And if you'd like a breakdown, I can provide you. And Sergeant Lip, like I said, he does an outstanding job. He has it from he breaks it down by month, and who went, and where they went, how much the cost was, including per diem, overtime, and the class, and the amount of tuition for the registration fee for each officer.
Well, based upon this, the numbers that I ran, just real quick here,
Okay?
and I don't know if August 31st has an additional payment in it, but you're on pace to be $70,000 over budget on your salary line this year, for 2019.
On salary?
Is that accurate?
I actually even updated the finance report that was in tonight's.
Should have been there.
I didn't see that.
Okay.
Is that in here, just so we can?
It's not in, it's just the report from the finance committee.
Okay.
And please don't take this as me not supporting. I've had issues, boy, you ask questions and all of a sudden you hate the police department because you're asking questions. That's not the case. I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around this. So I appreciate your indulgence with the questions. Here's what I'm having difficulty with, is when I run the numbers for the first 8 months of the year, and I say, okay, based upon what they've spent for the first 8 months, if I say that they're gonna spend that for 12 months, it shows you under budget, way under budget. And then I see that we're asking for more money next year. And so that's why I'm questioning it, because I can't wrap my arms around it, my mind around it. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay, so, a few line items. Let's just look at repairs and maintenance on radios.
Let me just show you this real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, Mrs. Rip, go ahead.
So my report to the finance committee was the police department for ending September 30th was at 77.68% of salary and benefits, slightly above target. They were at 80.67 on salaries, 85.68 on benefits, which is 774,000 of 960 budgeted and 328 of 383 budgeted. So we're running above pace on their budget for 2000.
Overall.
Yes, well,
Right.
on salary benefits.
I know, they're above. They're above what was budgeted.
Yes.
Right, not below. Spending more than we budgeted. Right.
Overall, their entire budget is still on target, but they're slightly above. It's like 7%, they should be 75, but salary and benefit line items are running above.
I'm suggesting that the amount of money that we have budgeted for 2020 is too low. That's what I'm getting at. They're already there now, and you're saying that you're not going to be there, that you're only increasing this by $60,000. It seems to me that number is too low. But that's.
So we took, every employee put in the proposed new rates.
But you did the same thing last year, and we're over by 70,000.
Depends on what, yeah. depends on-
You see what I mean?
Yeah, depends
So
on
you,
what,
using your logic from last year, we're in this, if we're using the same logic again this year, logically, we're probably gonna be higher than what we budgeted.
they didn't use, well, not the same logic, we use current proposed rates for salary and benefits.
Okay.
And then we have to add in overtime, is what the.
And I understand that there's a fluctuation trying to hit it. Okay, so repairs and maintenance on radios, you're not spending hardly any money on that, and all the radios are brand new. Is that something we expect to have again next year with brand new radios that, in my mind, I would hope are under some sort of warranty?
Well, they're only under warranty for a year. So,
Okay, so we're out of warranty.
yeah.
Okay. Here's another one. This is my favorite. You have a $10,000 budget for miscellaneous. I have
Yes.
no idea what's in miscellaneous, but you've spent less than $1,000 through August, which leaves $7,000. Well, it leaves basically $9,100 that this is why you're overall hitting budget. But my question is for 2020, do you really need $8,000 if you're only projected to spend $1,000 this year?
Well, there's several, and I don't know what kind of invoices are outstanding, because this is August. There's several items that come out of the miscellaneous budget.
Okay.
And those are office, some of the office supplies that we have specific to, crime prevention, the kids, bringing items, those type of items to schools and community outreach and that type of stuff.
Right. No, I get it.
I don't know, I guess I can't answer that specifically, saying that
Here's what I'm trying to
use
do.
8,000 or we're
I'm
going to use
trying
less.
to reallocate this budget to get you a car, because I think you're gonna need one. Because we're
Oh, I
gonna
know.
delay the
Yeah.
expense, and then we're gonna be on the hook for 2 cars in 2020.
Right.
And I'm trying to take the taxpayers' money. The taxpayers, again, have made it clear, albeit by a small margin, that they're really not interested in expanding further. So having said that, as a policymaker, it tells me that I have to be careful with how I'm spending the dollars that are currently being allocated here. So I'm trying to work within this and finagle whatever I can to try to get to a point where we can stretch every dollar to get to a car, which is what I'm trying to do. And I'm not so far being very successful in that, and that's okay. Your department knows, I would think you would know best. I'm looking at this homicide investigation. Here's another example of, we budgeted $1,500 for 2019, we've spent nothing. I doubt we're gonna get an expense in 2019 for that, but we're requesting another $1,500 for 2020. My understanding was that the county took that over, and that we're not gonna be charged anything for that.
Well, we still accrue fees. It may not be $1,500, or it may not be because the homicide is over. That should have been changed to a general investigation type thing, more of a, let's call it a rainy day fund. If we do have a large crime or a complex investigation that needs to be done, then the fees would come out of that.
Well, $1,500 isn't gonna get you very far on that, and if
No,
you...
it's not, but it could provide us with
Right.
opportunities for equipment needed in those type of investigations, or improvements on existing software, or any of that stuff.
We already have budget line items for those specific items that you've just mentioned. I'm just trying to get to a point, do you really need that? I mean,
No, you can have that. That can be, since
Add
we
it.
didn't, and I
Subtract
don't know
it.
if there's any invoices that might show up under that line item. I would guess not.
okay. I'm going to ask a question that I've asked every chief that has sat in your seat prior to you. No one's been able to give me a really good answer, so that's okay if you can't provide me with one. But I'm trying to figure out how the county bills us for care and custody of prisoners. Because you're on pace to spend roughly $75,000 this year. Last month's bill was $5,000, but we're budgeting $148,000 for next year. Now, I understand that we have to be careful when we budget there, but that number is going up from $118,000, nearly $30,000 over 2 years. And so if the bill last month was for $5,000, are you able to ascertain how the county is billing us so we can properly and effectively budget for this item?
That's more of a, I guess, a projection. And we go by how many people were arrested. There's a booking fee, there's a daily fee, and all those items, and that's where the increase comes up, depending on how many people we take to jail, depending on how long they're in there. So, it's those are the fees that are accrued when we take someone to jail.
In my spare time, which someone who's probably going to look at me and go, you need to get a life, I won't name her name, but I've actually monitored how many times someone is incarcerated by the city of Woodland over a 6-month period, and it never matches. It is all over the place. It's like a yo-yo. It could be 5, we could incarcerate 5 people one month, 15 the next. The month where we incarcerate 5, the bill's huge. When we have 15 people in there, it's less. It makes absolutely no sense how that number's being given to the city. I would love to be able to just send out an invoice and go, I can't tell you how I came up with it, but I need you to pay it.
Well,
it doesn't work.
And that's where the municipal chiefs got together, and we're in the middle of the negotiations, because those are the same questions that we've asked the county. And so there is a formula, I haven't seen it yet, but there is a formula that they use for booking fees, but there's going to be a set bed fee, a set housing fee for what it's worth, is what we're looking forward to in 2020, 2021, 22, and so on and so forth.
Well, I'd be interested to understand how that bed fee is going to help the taxpayers of Woodland. It doesn't seem to ever, it is a yo-yo, and I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. I'm just saying, from a policy standpoint, you're on budget to spend $75,000 this year. We're almost saying, guess what? In 2020, we're going to double our actual spend. Unless we get another invoice next month and it's for $25,000, which I've seen before, like, where did that come from? Because we didn't incarcerate anybody over the previous month higher than that. It was the same amount. It's almost as though, well, we're short in our budget. Well, how much do we need to charge these municipalities? Boom, send out the bill, and we write their budget. I don't understand from an accountability standpoint, and I'm glad you're on a crew to help try to understand that a little bit better, because it's mind-boggling to me.
And I have, obviously, I had the same concerns. So when the contract was up and we started talking about it, we got together and realized that things are not consistent. So we're in the process of finding that out.
Mr. Boyce, do you have this by month, or someone, can you pull by month and just send it to me? I don't think anybody else is interested. Just what our monthly spend has been, and a copy of those invoices?
Sure.
I'm going to start asking some more questions, because it doesn't make questions of the people who are coming up with the invoices. It doesn't make sense to me, and I can't wrap my head around it, and I'd like to be able to. Because I think we're budgeting too much next year, and I think that we could put $30,000 and pay for half of a car at least. And the worst case scenario is we end up having to do a budget amendment anyway. But I just think there's too much money, unless we can try to figure out a trend here to help us better understand what that number should be for 2020. I just think that one specific line item, because it's so big, I really think needs some extra scrutiny, in my opinion.
So maybe I can get together with the chief, go over the invoices, and Sergeant Wood, and bring something back to council. And we'll get you copies of the invoices.
Okay, I don't know if everyone else wants it, and maybe the mayor will say, well, Frederick, if nobody else wants it, then you're not getting it, and I'm okay with that too, so.
I'm curious to know, I realized we were so inconsistent with my interest in the way things are being done at the county. I would be curious to have that conversation as well.
And I think it's a good thing for all of us to have, because it would be nice for us to be able to look at what Ben is looking at, so we had a clue what he was talking about.
And I'm sorry, I should tell everyone, I go through the line item of the budget and I create my own spreadsheet and I start looking at every line item. If it doesn't pass my smell test, then I bring it up for a discussion. And
Remember that thing about Get Alive?
Yes, but again, I feel like I have an obligation to understand before I pass, which is our main primary goal as city council. This is our main function, is to give him a budget, to give the mayor's office a budget and staff to work from. It is our responsibility when we're passing the budget to make sure we're giving them the tools that they need, given the resources that are provided by the taxpayers. We have an obligation to go through this exercise, I understand that everyone gets into this. It is very complex. It is a lot of information, but it's something that I take very serious, and I want to make sure that I have a good grasp. So if anybody asks me, I kind of have an idea of what it is. I may not always know, but at least I can fake it till I make it. And I do ask Ms. Rip a few questions throughout the year if something doesn't look right. I just want to get to a point where we're as close as we possibly can, because I don't want to give the mayor's office or any portion of the budget. I don't want to give anyone any more than they need. I'm looking forward because we are going to have some serious discussions come. I hope retreat. I hope we can do the retreat early this year because this budget is unsustainable. It is absolutely unsustainable. And I said that again, and I said it at the last meeting, and I'll say it at this meeting. We have to look at it because and we actually have to do something. We have to right the ship from a numbers standpoint. Revenues drive expense, and at some point, if you don't have the revenue, then you need to either reallocate the revenue, and I would enjoy having that conversation because I'm not sure where you're going to pull from. But hey, come January, we'll have some fresh blood on council that can take a look at this and help us maybe see the error of our ways, because I've been looking for it and I haven't found it. So, but I'm looking forward to the retreat, and I think a big topic of discussion at that retreat is going to need to be, what level of service we provide from a police standpoint, what that looks like, because the budget and salary, or for the budget for salaries and benefits is absolutely not sustainable, given the current revenue situation that we're in. So I look forward to having that discussion with the rest of council. I know it'll be a well thought out discussion, but it's going to have to be something that we're going to have to look at the retreat come whenever that is. When is that?
I'll be working on a date for you.
Okay.
It's on the radar.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, for allowing me to ask my questions. And
I hate to correct you, it's Chief.
What did I say?
Mr.
Chief, I'm sorry.
Chief.
I called Sergeant Lip, Officer Lip. I get all the titles wrong. You can just call me Mr. Fredericks, or if you don't want to. You don't have to call me Councilman if you don't want to. Thank you, Mr. Finn.
Just checking. All right. It's 8:04. Let's take a break. Take a 6-minute break, and then we'll reconvene. Oh, marijuana. I know. I just need to get back in my slacks. Again.
I'm going to use the excuse that I can't
All right.
buy flowers and I'm not making it.
So, at this time, Mr. Boyce, are you ready, Mrs. Rep? I'm sorry. Okay. At this time, are we ready to turn this over to council for discussion, or do we have anything else for presentation purposes?
Well, we did, on the agenda, we had the fire contract. We already talked about that.
I guess I can go down
We talked about operating transfers. We already talked about capital outlay in the general fund, or the lack thereof.
We talked about
We did talk about agency requests. We did provide in the packet some additional information, so you can see what was requested by the agencies. So that is in that paperwork, page 9 on that paperwork we handed you tonight. So you have all the detail there. Enhancements, we're really not funding any, but you have copies of the enhancements. So unless council has questions on those things, we can turn it over for city council.
Kick it over. Okay? Questions on any of those items? Well, I guess we'll just go right into discussion and they can ask those questions now. All right, so I guess that concludes the presentation from my office, and I hope that it was informational and you were able to ascertain that we are being conservative this year, once again. And it's hard. It's a difficult budget, as Mr. Fredericks has said. So with that, I am kicking it to council now. Questions, comments, concerns, discussion.
I just have a real quick question. On this
Mr.
general
Plaza.
government funding request page, is any of this stuff that we don't need?
General funding, where did you find that? In your,
It was on the top page.
Page 9.
oh,
Page 9 from what
Because there
page?
seems to be a lot of
Today's-
money going to
From what we
agencies
got
that
oh, here we go.
Yeah.
What you got?
I never see it around.
Okay. Association of Washington Cities is very important to us. We get a lot of information that allows us to be part of the discussion when it comes to our legislative priorities, so that gets us in the door. Department of Emergency Services, I have my own thoughts, but Mrs. Ripp, maybe you can speak to that one. I know that that would be our emergency services, I don't know, a landslide.
Well, for instance, we got an email, I think it was today, that talked about they're updating the hazard mitigation plan, so they're taking the lead on that.
You do need that to get FEMA funding, so
Right.
it's something.
So if something bad happens, it's our ability to get our money back for us and our citizens. Humane Society has been discussed. Diking assessment,
That's a tax.
that's a tax. Southwest Clean Air Agency, we're being charged for air, that's also a tax.
Can I stop you for a second?
Yes,
You're
sir.
saying tax. Can you please explain how
Sorry.
that works? This is a pass-through. It's a tax that's collected, then it's a tax that the taxpayers are already paying, correct?
This is a tax on city land for the Dyking District.
Oh, wonderful.
So it's our ownership.
It's a city property.
So we're paying it
So
on
city
behalf.
property that we're paying to somebody else.
Give it
Yes.
to them. Can't they have it? You can have it.
We can get but would that be, is that City Hall? I mean, is that
That's all city.
all city property? This property,
Parks,
all our parks,
everything we own.
community center?
They're a junior taxing district, and so just like Fort Baker Regional Library, we charge taxpayers in Dyking District charge.
So everything we own within the Dyken District.
Okay. We're paying our bill.
Yeah, Southwest Clean Air is mandated by RTW, and that's based on per capita.
Another tax that we're being charged per person for air. Downtown Woodland Revitalization, we're not funding anything out of them.
Good again.
For them, we haven't done that in the last few years, but we do have positive conversation going with them at this time. Calais Economic Development Council, you saw the presentation that was here 2 weeks ago or last Monday with Ted Sprague, the CEDC, a very important organization for Woodland. It brings business to town. It helps us get our land sold, hopefully, and businesses started up. Woodland Public Schools Family Community Resource Center, as you can see, we're not giving anything to that. Lower Columbia CAP, that is the bus that comes in from Longview to our park and ride.
Do they actually invoice us?
Well, they didn't invoice us last year, right? Or did we? We never did get one.
That's correct, but yeah.
Still
Well,
not
As I
watching, still
forget,
not watching the bus.
but
Yeah.
they asked for a letter, and they asked for funding, so hopefully they'll get that.
Yeah. Well, and I did see, so I think in 2017, they upped at $500, and I got really up.
Purpose in the Humane Society does, so.
Well, and they did up their ride cost to $2. So I mean, I kind of feel like they're doing their part on their end, and they're not being astronomical with their
They're
ask.
just not invoicing us.
They're just
though.
not invoicing us.
Calais County Human Services, sorry, not me on there.
Oh, human service, substance abuse, per RCW, I'm assuming that's another, they ask, we have to pay.
Yeah, we collect liquor excise taxes on when they fire by RCW to mandate a certain percentage of that back to substance abuse prevention.
And the mosquito district is based on our property. That's something we voted in at the last election
Yeah.
cycle.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's a good thing.
Questions? Oh, there's still more on there. The COG dues, very important. We received a $600,000 grant from them that we are going in, that we're spending this year or next year?
And that one actually went down, if you look at page 3 of the handout, that is actually going to be $13,187.
Oh, okay, so that actually went down, 13,187. And the other three I will allow staff to speak to. because that has to do with court and attorneys.
So the prosecuting attorney is now a City of Kelso employee. So we're looking at $26,400. We entered into an agreement last year on that under short notice. Indigent defense, $56,400. It's been the same amount for several years. And Cowlitz County District Court, looking at $42,720. So.
What's the 42,720 and how is that number determined?
So we have two different rates, one's on infractions, one's on criminal, it's based on caseload.
Okay.
And then we look at historically what we paid over the past 2 to 3 year cycle. And then they also have, I think there was a 3% or 6%
So
rate
what,
increase.
so if I'm understanding you correctly, the same person that sends out the care and custody of prisoners bill is also the one sending out the Cowlitz County District Court bill?
What?
But this bill is also being sent out by the same person that was just discussed that sends out the med fee.
No, actually, we get a caseload report that says the number of cases they file, and then we get an annual report that shows all that.
So there is some logical methodology to how they're creating the number?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, I think that answers.
And this was Mr. Claus that had
I have
the
another
floor.
question.
Sorry.
Okay, so the prosecuting attorney who works on behalf of the city is only getting $26,000.
Based on caseload.
Right.
Yeah.
And the defense attorney is getting 56. I mean, that's just,
Different.
what's the reasoning behind that? You would think it would be flipped.
I think because we're sharing the cost of the city of Kelso. attorney.
We are.
Oh.
We're sharing, that's a shared
That makes
cost.
sense.
Yes.
It's not
Okay.
just the City of Kelso, it's the City of Castle Rock, Kalama. I don't think Longview is in there, they have their own.
And then Kelso.
That makes sense.
And the City of Woodland. So.
And
Takes
Miss.
a while, but I get that.
Okay.
And there's nothing on here that we can cut?
Yeah, you can cut whatever you want, you just have to
Well,
have 4
apparently
people
can't,
to agree
because
with
a lot of
you.
it's state mandated.
You can't, let's see, you can't get rid of the diking district, you can't get rid of the meadow control. I don't advise getting rid of the CEDC.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of the Southwest Clean Air Act. I would say the only ones that are available for you to cut would be the AWC, CEDC, and the rest of them are have-tos.
So the ones that we actually use.
AWC, we get more resources out.
Yeah.
So the ones that we actually use are the ones we can cut.
Yes, that's correct.
See how that works, Mr. Claus?
Yes. The ones that we actually use and lean on quite regularly. And they also have the smallest fee.
And I'm
Thank you,
very
Olympia.
surprised, one of the agencies that I would like to have us explore funding, because it's been a valuable resource for me, is the MRSC.
Oh, yes.
We do not fund the MRC adequately, and it is a very valuable resource.
Always on the chopping block.
It is always on the chopping block for them to cut, and I can place a phone call and get someone who can tell me an unbiased opinion on how something should be, and I can determine how that should be is versus what reality is. So it's been a very valuable resource, and I would like to actually,
But that's a
one
free
day.
service to us through
They're
AWC.
funded through, on an individual bill to each city.
Yeah.
It's a fee that
The
this,
legislature collects.
yeah, the legislature collects a fee and
it's
funds
always
them.
on the chopping block.
Yes, it's always one of
Yeah.
the first things to let go.
Yeah, it's a resource for cities.
Yeah. Yes.
And I can tell you, most states I've worked in, they don't have this. I mean, it is, like City Council Member Frederick says, it is a luxury to be able to pick up the phone and get an answer and understand what other cities and counties are doing. So,
And not pay for it.
And-
And get a reasonable time frame too.
And immediately, like same day, I can literally have a council meeting Monday night, have a policy decision that I am not, that I don't want I want an outside perspective. I can call and they'll give me down and dirty, both sides, here's the deal, here's what you should do, or here's my suggestion, and they let you decide. But they'll give you resources, links to things, documents that help, one of the things that I used when I got here was, we didn't have any council rules and procedures that governed our meetings. I went there and was able to pull from 15 cities. Now, I pulled together, and since I was doing the work, I'm like, well, I like that, so I'll put them together and make it how I like it. Hopefully, I can get 4 people to agree with me, and that's how we got council rules of procedure. It was the MRSC that did that, and it's a very valuable resource. I'm sure, Mr. Goddard, I'm sure you use it quite a bit.
We use it, if not weekly, daily.
Yeah.
With our contracts and such,
And they send out, they have newsletters that come out, or long newsletters, if you haven't subscribed, that's good. Your box, I actually sent one out today on elections.
Yeah.
Perfect.
We need to monitor that, so when Olympia is looking at cutting it, we can.
We do. There was a couple of years ago that we were up there fighting for them not to do it. I think it was 2017 we were up there.
The number's so small.
Yes, and yeah. Did that answer your questions, Mr. Plaza?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay. All right.
Oh, hey, I got something. If nobody else has anything.
Go.
I want to discuss the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee's recommendation. Can you point to the budget where that's at?
And just for the record, there are 2 city councilors that are going to participate in the conversation because of offices they hold on the Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, I got it, okay. Am I looking at, when you say page 21?
Shove the hand out this evening.
Sorry, I'm looking at the Finance Committee meeting agenda. Okay, got it, page 21. I have some concerns about the recommendation that's been made. And my hope is that we can request that there's at least an agreement that we could refer this back to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. I have concerns currently. Obviously, with the amount has increased substantially year over year. I am very concerned with some employees possibly being treated unfairly. I have concerns with questionable employment practices. I believe their operating budget is too high. I am concerned that they're taking money out of savings. The city has scrubbed its operating budget, and I think it's time for the chamber to do the same. And it would be my request to refer this back to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee under the rules, recommending that this be reduced to $30,000 for fiscal year 20. That would be my reasoning, and I think we need to be very careful. We are spending taxpayer money. This is lodging tax money, and we are sending it over to the chamber where there is a tremendous expense for operating. And I quite frankly do not see the value with that number as high as it is. I think it provides a good resource, but on the same token, I think it's something that needs to go back to that committee and have that committee provide us a recommendation. It would be my recommendation to reduce the expense from $55,000 to $30,000, and my hope is that we can get at least council agreement to refer that, at least 4 members, or I don't know how many have to recuse themselves, 3 to 4 members to say, yeah, let's have the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee take another look at it with that recommendation.
Can you explain the rules, please? We went through this a couple years ago.
So page 30 has the detail of the chamber budget, and page 91 has what does the municipality do with lodging tax
So in a nutshell, city council can request that the committee take another look at it. There's an unofficial AG opinion that said after the committee re-reviews it, city council can make a change. That meeting has to happen 45 days before the budget's adopted, which means that committee would have to meet this week. We have to give that meeting 24 hours notice. So it could necessitate a special city council meeting at the back end to adopt the budget.
Mr. Boyce, it's also my understanding that the city can adopt a first reading and second reading of the budget with the exception of one specific item. I see Ms. Ripp shaking her head yes, that we have the ability to do that and delay that portion, which might delay payments that are made. Is that?
So I think you'd have to, yeah, you could. I think the 2020 budget then technically would have to be amended to include the new appropriation. Do you agree?
Which could be done at the first meeting, quite frankly, in January, couldn't it? Because we're going to, most likely, we're going to adopt, I would assume. I'm not hearing much debate as it relates to the overall budget. This is one specific item in the budget. It would seem to me that we could adopt, 99.5% of the budget, and then adopt this later through an amendment.
And the 2020 budget after the calendar year.
Right.
And then the council's second action is that we have the council approve all agreements with those documents and as was adopted in the budget. So there's really a second look back on how that appropriation was done individually by department. We usually bring those in January, February for the council.
Right. Yeah. We're approving it in the budget, but then there's...
Based on the lodging tax advisory's recommendation, and then you can go back and give the notice to the committee and then amend it, amend the 2020 budget with whatever action.
There's a secondary adoption, is what I'm saying. You're approving the overall budget, but that second action that you take is actually saying this is how you want the money spent. Beijing...
After the lodging tax is
Right. Okay.
And then 45 days.
Okay. My hope is that we can, that we have necessary council support to be able to refer it back to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee for another look.
And this is a workshop, so we can't take a vote.
Right.
So we just need consensus from those that are able.
Ms. Humber?
I agree. Because my iPad was not working, I did not know about the meeting, and so I was not at this meeting. So I probably would have done things a little differently. So, yeah, I'd like to have another look at it, although I probably won't be here. Once we get it done before the end of the year.
Okay.
I'm okay with looking at it.
The lodging tax committee still needs
What's the 45 day?
45 days is.
Is it page 90?
Just read it somewhere.
It's
91.
And is that for the, I'm sorry, I was trying to track, I'm a little slow. Is that for the 45 days for the entire budget? or-
So, in addition to reviewing applications for the use of lodging tax, what does it do? The submission must occur at least 45 days before final action will be taken on the governing body's proposal. Even if the committee finishes its work before the 45 days are up, the governing body must still wait 45 days. The committee's comments must include an analysis to which the proposal will accommodate activities for tourists. And if the advisory committee does not submit comments before the time the final action is to be taken on the proposal, the governing body may go ahead and take final action. So the AG opinion was that the council could still change the recommendation, but the committee would still need to meet and consider a change to it.
Once, we just have to make sure that the procedural requirements
Yes.
are fulfilled.
Right.
Nothing in that, though, says anything to do with the overall budget. It seems to me that the budget process is a separate budget. It's a separate process. So we could still pass the city's operating budget and deal with this 45 days later. My question to you is, I'm concerned with this whole notion that it must be done this week. Doesn't it just start, if we notify them that they have to meet next week, doesn't the clock start 45 days after they make their decision?
It talks about 45 days for the governing body to take
Yeah,
final action.
so you're right. So
on the
when I was saying meeting this week, that was in anticipation that you'd want to include that as part of the 2020 budget, before December 31st, when we're required to take action on the budget.
Right.
If you want to adopt the rest of the budget and take care of that in 2020, that can be done also.
Okay.
And then we could be more flexible on the time of that.
Ms. Humber, do you serve on the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee?
I do.
Okay. You'd be part of the decision-making on the LTAC. Okay.
So I think I'm hearing 3 city councilors that.
I'm on board with it too.
4?
Neat.
5? Okay.
How does, this is a sidebar question. Are you appointed by council to serve on that
Yes.
board? Okay, so I'm just looking forward into 2020 that we need to put somebody in your spot. Okay, thank you. That's all. Just, I didn't have that on my radar. Okay.
So we will call a meeting of the committee.
And the other thing to keep in mind is that the committee is made up of people that pay the tax to people that receive the tax. So our current members are the Chamber of Commerce on the board. The Lilac Gardens representative.
It's right here. We've got Susan Humbird, Kendra Pollard with Lewis River Inn, Mrs. Johnson with Woodland Tourist Info, so she's the chamber representative. Judy Crone with Holga Klager Lilac Garden, she's a receiver of the funds. Is it Nikhil Chand, who pays the tax. And then Mrs. Rip, you're not on the board, you just oversee the board. Okay. 3, 4, 5, okay.
So really, the clock starts 45 days after they meet, right? So if they don't meet until, let's say you can't get a quorum until week after next or next week, I don't even know what the date. It's 45 days from there, and then council will take action in a meeting in January, most likely.
So,
We said within 45 days.
Within 45 days?
Within 45.
Yeah.
Okay.
They would
I
meet.
thought we had to wait like a cooling off period.
No.
Okay.
that's what I keep thinking too.
Okay, I
So
misunderstood.
we counted from December 31st back 45 days, which would have meant this coming Saturday would have been when, if you wanted to include their recommendation amended, if they amended it, into budget, or the final budget to.
But presumably, any council member could make a motion, which could be seconded by another council member, to approve the operating budget for the city of Woodland, with the exception of any disbursement of the lodging tax money that would be considered at a later date, which we could then maybe amend the budget or
I would
amend
think
by
that
action.
you could adopt the budget with the appropriation in fund balance and then ask to appropriate that after you bring back the budget.
I have some concerns with that process. I'm just going to throw this out there. This agency, I believe, is probably relying on whether or not they will be receiving this funding from city council. And by holding them off until February, I heard a February date in there.
So they
may throw it into
and they only
an
invoice
issue for
us
them.
3 times a year.
Oh, okay.
You don't just get the money, you have to invoice.
Oh, okay, okay.
But
all right.
still, they won't want to incur expense.
Right.
Until they know. if they have
For sure.
I'm just throwing that out there for conversation.
So what we would generally do is have the agreements ratified by council in January, February, and then that would set the fine amount, and then we would start invoicing this and see what type of money they receive. Most of them, except the chamber and visitor center, is on a reimbursement basis, so they have to provide their receipts that show they actually the expense of the reimbursement. Usually June, sometime in June or November.
Looking at this budget, I haven't looked at it. Do you know if they have reserves? If the chamber has a reserve account, if city council does not give them the full amount and their first, they go 6 weeks in, do they have the ability to pay the bills?
But can I add something to that? I think it's a little premature to try to determine what that is. We don't know what their books are like.
Okay.
So, and I would also like to see this, I would like to see this Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, I would like to see this on the council retreat agenda. I think it's important that we look really at the long term here on this item.
Noted. Anything else for discussion on the 2020 budget?
Staff has done a remarkable job at stretching the dollars. I wish I could say I found anything in this budget, but I didn't. I'm hoping somebody else can help me see what I'm missing. Looking forward to that.
I too hope that those that have been extremely critical of not only council but my office have the ability to be educated and find the hidden money as well. All right. Thank you. So next steps for the budget, will this be coming back forward on Monday?
So for Monday.
For a regular meeting?
We have the first reading of the final budget scheduled and the property tax, the 1% property tax addition, and the public hearing. So
For the budget itself?
For the budget itself.
Okay.
So if city council is okay with that, we will proceed.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your hard work. I really appreciate it. I know it hasn't been easy. It was a difficult process this year for sure. But I do look forward to the conversations coming forward in 2020 with council during our retreat, and hopefully finding some solutions moving into 2021. So that's where our focus is right now. With that, I appreciate everyone's time this evening. It is 8:42, and that concludes the meeting, I think. It's just a workshop. Yes, I don't need anything. There we go. Just making sure. Did you guys bet something?
No? Did we already make a motion to?
Chief,
Yes.
we didn't need a motion to adjourn. I just said we're done. That's how this one works.